Today we're going to look at how to write a good essay. Okay, so essays are super important for high school. 70% of what your HSC marks are going to constitute are, composed of essay writing. And just a bit about myself, I'm Julia. So I am the principal of JP English, and I came first in English at James Roos Agricultural High School, and I also got a New South Wales state rank in 2015. All right, so we'll just move on. And one more thing is, if you want the PDF of today's content, feel free to text us as well, and then we'll let you know on how you can get that PDF. All right, so a bit about us before we jump into essay writing. I just wanted to introduce our tutors, what our courses are like, what we're about, and what makes us a bit different from any other English tutoring school. So our team, we're a hand-selected bunch of state rankers and James Roos graduates. We know our English syllabus very well, inside out. We've gotten really good marks for English, and we aim to instill that knowledge into the people who join our tutoring school. One thing about us that is a bit different from other tutoring schools is that we focus on both school assessments during our lessons and also our own rigorously constructed course material. And everything that we do is related to the New South Wales syllabus. And it's all there to maximize your marks for your school assessment and eventually for when you're in Year 12 doing the HSC. We do one-on-one, we do small groups. So small groups are groups of 2 to 5 students. We also do classes as well. So classes, the maximum capacity of classes is usually 12 students. So there is a range of options, and we do have a range of tutors who specialize in different things. So some tutors might do ones only, some might do classes only. So it's up to the tutor, up to their expertise. And every single week for years 7 to 11, we provide very structured course material that's related to the syllabus. Year 12 is more catering to the school assessments. It's solely focused on the school assessments. And for all of our grades, we really focus on exam technique. So we have quizzes for year 7 to 10 every single week. We have end of term exams for year 7 to 11. For year 12s, we do mock trials and exam technique practice. So that's really important. One other thing we do is that we have sample answers for all our weekly booklets for year 7 to 11, so that students know what sort of essay writing or creative writing or discursive writing they need to aim for to achieve those top marks. So they get that sample answer so they know exactly what's expected. It's really important not just to go to tutoring for year 11 and 12, it's really important to have good foundations in younger grades. Your foundations can't be built in just a few months, right? It requires years of rigorous, practice and feedback. So that's why we do have very rigorous year 7 to 10 courses. We follow the New South Wales syllabus, and we do essay writing. So with essay writing, we analyse novels, poems, Shakespearean plays, films, speeches, non-fiction. So these are all text types that are covered in the high school syllabus. We also do comprehension exam practice because that's commonly tested not just in year 7 to 10, but it's also tested in year 12. So that's why we really want to prepare our students early. And we also do creative writing and reflection writing because these are all going to be tested all throughout high school from term 1 of year 7 to year 12. That's why we really focus on creative and reflection writing as well as essay writing. We do discursive and persuasive writing. These text types aren't covered too much in younger grades. They start doing it at schools in year 10 and they do it all the way to year 12. But then we want to prepare students very early from year 7 so that they aren't too fazed by these sorts of writing when they're in older grades. So it's always better to prepare them early. So we want to show them discursive writing and persuasive writing from the very first few terms of year 7. And we do comparative study. So comparative study is something that's covered in years 9 to 12, but then once again, we want to prepare our students early, so we do it from year 7 as well. So as we do cover basically everything that the syllabus asks for in year 7 to 12. And then with our lessons, we want to be very structured with our lessons. So we start every lesson with a 15-minute quiz, and this just builds exam technique. We also have an end of term exam. So this is where students will be ranked, their grades will be sent to their parents can keep track of their progress. We add sample answers for every week, as I mentioned earlier. It's just really important to show students what a good answer looks like. Otherwise, if we give feedback and they don't know exactly what we're looking for, then that's not as good as giving them a sample answer so they can see exactly what they need to do. So that's why we do sample answers for every single booklet. And it takes a lot of our time, but it's good for the students. That's why we do it. And one key thing that we do is students have school assessments every term, usually once a term at school, and we provide extensive school assessment help during our lessons. Even during our classes, so we have one-on-one, one-on-two options, we have class options. Even in our classes, we have allocated time every single week to go through a school assessment. So we still give that individualized attention to students, even though it's in a class setting. We give them resources for their texts that they study at school, and also we show past student exemplars. So any past students who've done really well under us, so students who've gotten 95 plus for their English advanced mark, students who've gotten state ranks in the past, we would show their students exemplars so that our current students know exactly what is needed to do very well in high school English. Our Year 11 course, we basically follow what the 3 modules that Year 11s do. So Year 11, for those who don't know, it's only 3 terms, not 4 terms like all the other years. So we just follow the school syllabus. We do reading to write in term 1. We do narratives that shape our world at the end of term 1 and also the start of term 2. Usually schools do this module during term 2, but we just go a bit early. We like to be a bit advanced. And also critical study of literature, and that's the end of term 2. Usually schools do it in term 3, so we want to just push it up a bit earlier, because we really want to get to term 3 in Year 11, which is the term right before Year 12. And this entire term, we do a head start for Year 12. So we do everything that the Year 12 syllabus tests. So we do comprehension, exam practice, creative writing, reflection writing, persuasive writing, discursive writing. And once again, we have end of term exams for Year 11s, and we rank them, send students feedback, and we have sample answers provided for our weekly syllabus-based booklets. And school assessment help is given throughout our lessons. And once again, we have resources and we have past student exemplars. And then with Year 12, these lessons are solely focused on improving your school rank. So we provide detailed resources for all your school texts, personalized feedback for your essays and your creatives. We give sample essays and creatives from top past students and state rankers. And also we have comprehension exam papers with sample answers, and we have exam technique practice. Okay, so that's a bit about our courses. So the structure of our seminar today, we have 3 parts. So we have the first part, which is how to write an introduction of an essay. Our second part is how to write body paragraphs. And our third part is how to answer exam questions, so essay questions. Okay, so by the way, for an essay structure, you have an introduction and then you have 3 body paragraphs and a conclusion. So what we're doing today is we're looking at the harder bits. The conclusion is very easy to write. We're not going to worry about that tonight. We're going to worry more about the introduction and the body paragraphs. And with body paragraphs, there are usually 3 body paragraphs. In an essay, sometimes 4, but it depends on what your task description is. And by the way, these are just little reminders for those who have joined late. If you have any questions, please just SMS my number 0469851794, and also SMS us if you need the PDF. We can give you some more details on how you can get it, and we have a Facebook page that you can check out. All right, so with part 1, this is how to write an introduction. Introductions are so important to do well because in the exam, when markers are marking your exam, introductions are the first thing that they look at, right? So you want to give your marker a positive first impression. So you want to do the intro very well. And this is just a generic structure for that. So with the intro, try to keep it to 80 to 100 words, no more than that. Otherwise, you're going to bore the marker, okay? So that would be around 4 sentences long. I wouldn't go any more than 4 sentences, to be honest. Otherwise, it just gets way too long and the marker is going to be a bit impatient and yeah, not great. In English, you always want to be concise, but also precise, okay? So concise, right? Don't be wordy, don't be verbose, but also precise in the way that you have to be specific about everything. You can't be vague about anything. So that just comes with practice. Your expression comes with practice. So our first sentence is the thesis statement. Okay, so some students have a lot of trouble with the thesis statement. I'll go more in depth with it when I talk about body paragraphs, because thesis statements are kind of similar to topic sentences. And we'll talk about topic sentences where we get to the body paragraph structure, which is part 2 of today. Now, this thesis statement is the first sentence of the entire essay. It needs to summarize the entire essay. So whatever you have in your thesis statement, the ideas in that thesis statement must be throughout the rest of the paragraphs in the entire essay. It also has to answer the question, and in that structure that I just talked about, the structure of our seminar, I did mention how we were going to look at how to answer essay questions in part 3. So this first sentence, you need to answer the question very well. Okay, and then we have the second sentence. This second sentence is where you introduce your text. There is a very concise way of introducing your text. Sometimes I see really wordy introductions of text, but this is an example of how you'd introduce it the most concisely. So what you have is, you have the full name of the author, you have the text type, you have the text title, and you have the date of publication. So try to do it in that order. Some students, they do it this way. They'll do it like Pride and Prejudice, 1818, written by Jane Austen, is a Bill Dunk's Roman novel. Can you see how that's super wordy? So if you want to be more concise, just do it this way. You have the author's name, full name, by the way, full name. You have the text type, you have the text title, and then you have the date of publication. One other thing is give a very brief contextual outline. What I mean by that is summarize very, very quickly from which time period this text is from. So in this case, this is an example. So you'd say something like set in Regency England, okay? So this is how you'd introduce a text, and then you need to finish up the sentence, obviously, with some more info about the text. Okay, so moving on, you have your third and fourth sentences. So it's up to you whether you want to spend 1 sentence outlining the 3 main ideas of each text, or you want to spend 2 sentences if you can't fit everything into 1 sentence. So as I said earlier, you probably only have time for 3 body paragraphs, or maybe 4 for an essay that you do at school. So each main idea needs to be in a paragraph. So therefore you have 3 main ideas usually. Now this is something really important. So try not to introduce your main ideas like this. Shakespeare presents the notions of deception, social alienation, and jealousy. A lot of students in year 7 and 8, and even year 9 do this, but you really shouldn't. What this does is you're basically summarizing each main idea into 1 or 2 words. So this is something that you'd see on Spark Notes, and you should not be, writing like they do on Spark Notes. So yeah, don't just summarize each theme into 1 word. What you need to do is expand on each theme and make it maybe 4 to 5 words, make it a phrase, okay? So this is an example of that. Shakespeare outlines the deceitful acts of manipulation, so that's idea number 1. The dehumanizing impact of social alienation, that's idea number 2. And the corrupting influence of jealousy, that's idea number 3, okay? So can you see how each idea, it's fleshed out, it's properly fleshed out into a little phrase. You don't need to make it overly long, although if you do need to use a lot of words to explain a certain idea, if it's a bit more complex, then it's okay to split this sentence up into 2, which is why I said the 3rd or the 4th sentence. But it really depends on what your ideas are. One other thing is try to have a cause and effect for each main idea. So with the cause and effect, I'll get to it later when I do part 2, which is the body paragraph structure. And then a final sentence of the intro would be, it's optional, you don't need to do it, but if you do decide to do it, and if your teacher wants you to do it, you can summarize your points and you need to link back to the question once again. So this is an example of an introduction, and students at JP English, in their booklets every week, they have sample answers, and it's usually very nicely laid out for them. This is an example of a part of an essay that they might get a sample answer for. So have a read of this intro. I'll just give you 1 or 2 minutes to read through it. And when you're reading through it, think about how this links back to the 3 or 4 sentences that we've talked about. Okay, so I just got a few questions from someone. So the first question is, do I always have to follow this structure all the time in exams? I mean, if I want to have a hook sentence as the first sentence in the intro, should I do that, or is it not practical during exams? I'm not sure what you mean by hooks, but this structure is usually quite optimal. Also, it depends on what your teachers recommend. So at our tutoring school, we do recognize that, English is very subjective and different teachers might say different things. So that also means you always need to listen to what your teacher wants and relay that back to, whatever tutor you have. So that's really important. And what we do is we always ask students, what do your teachers expect? And then we'll do whatever the teacher expects. But in this case, I feel like this is an optimal structure. If your teacher says something different, modify it. Second question that I got from the same person, regarding the body, is it true that all paragraphs need to follow the pure structure? Should I have a paragraph for words that will be used as a base for my argument in the next paragraph? Personally, yes, all paragraphs should follow peel. So I'm sure that teachers at school would say something like peel, or there are other variations. There's steel, teal, you know, all sorts of variations, but in the end, it's kind of the same sort of structure. They're just different names for it. And then the third question is, regarding the link at the end of each paragraph in the body, can I confirm it should be linked to the question or the next paragraph? So we'll get to all this. Right now we're doing the introduction. When we get to the body paragraph, you'll see what I mean by the link, and yes, it should definitely link to the question, okay? So if anyone else has any questions, please just SMS this number and then I'll just answer it throughout the seminar, like what I just did. All right, so hopefully everyone has read through this intro. Let's just go through it to see how it shows whatever we've just discussed. So first sentence should be the thesis statement. So it should outline the entire essay's main ideas and also answer the question. There isn't a question for this one. So this is just looking at how to write a thesis statement. With thesis statements, try to have a cause and effect. And we'll see how this one does have one. So this is a thesis statement, this first bit here. Enduring relevance is founded upon its exploration of the realms of human experience through gaining or losing power, instigated by mankind's inherent flaws. So the cause and effect for this would be exploration of the realms of human experience through gaining or losing power. Sorry, that's the effect, okay? And then the cause would be instigated by mankind's inherent flaws. So cause and effect doesn't need to be in that order, okay? It doesn't need to have the cause first and then the effect. Could be the other way around, as long as it's very clear to the marker that there is a cause and effect. And I'll get into why it's so important to have a cause and effect in the next slide. Okay, so that's that. And then our second sentence, we should be introducing the text. You can introduce one of your main ideas if you have space in that sentence, and that's what is done in this sentence. Set in Jacobean England, so that's a very brief contextual outline. And then you have Shakespeare's tragedy play King Lear, 1606. Okay, so that's just introducing the text. So ideally you would have had William Shakespeare's, and then you would have had tragedy play. Tragedy is okay, but tragedy play is safer to do. And then you have the text title, which is underlined in this case. So with text titles, you can underline it, you can put it in quotations. It's up to you which one you want to do. Explores how a ruler's flawed judgment can lead to disaster. So this is our first main idea, okay? So remember what we said about outlining the main ideas and making sure that it's in phrases, so one phrase for each main idea. So this is an example of that. So this is the first main idea, ruler's flawed judgment can lead to disaster. And then the second main idea is endorsing the judgment of an individual based on their actions rather than social constructs. So these are the two main ideas so far. And then you can see how there is an additional sentence here, because this intro is meant to have three main ideas, right? But then obviously, if you put all three main ideas in that one sentence, that sentence is going to get way too long. So that's why you have this third main idea here. So can you guys see how, through this example, you can see how each main idea is fleshed out quite nicely. So it's very clear to the marker what's going to happen in the body paragraphs. Okay, so now we're on to the second part of today's seminar, which is looking at body paragraph structure. So, peel structure, as I said earlier, there are many variations, but it's essentially the same sort of structure in the end. So first one is point, so this is a topic sentence. And then we have the E, the first E is for evidence, so these are your quotes, okay? You always need quotes from your prescribed text. It's really important. This is the second E for explanation, so this is analysis, okay? And then this combination, try to put it in one sentence every single time, and you do it 4 times in every body paragraph. So you really want 4 quotes, at least 4 quotes. Some schools say 3 is okay. Personally, in the HSC, 4 is optimal. Okay, so 4 quotes per body paragraph, please. And then you have your link. So this is your concluding sentence, and always link back to the question. So yeah, this body paragraph, you'll get taught it from the second or third term of year 7. So, straight away in year 7, you're shown this structure and you're expected to know how to write it. We teach students this from week 1 of term 1 of year 7. So our students are usually pretty good at essays just because we practice it nearly every single week as well. Okay, this is our topic sentence. So this is the P that we just mentioned. So this topic sentence needs to summarize your argument. And remember what we said about cause and effect for our thesis statement? So that cause and effect is also relevant to our topic sentences. So I'll show you what cause and effect means. So there is a difference between cause and effect and statements. And it's really important to do the cause and effect and not do statements. A cause and effect, an example of that would be this sentence here. The composer explores how interactions with nature allow an individual to encounter wider society. So in this case, the cause would be the composer, sorry, that's not the cause. This would be the cause. Interactions with nature, right? So that's a cause. The effect would be allow an individual to encounter wider society. Is that clear, right? So it's very important to have a cause and effect. The reason for that is so that you have an argument throughout your paragraph. And I'll show you why you need that in the next slide. A statement is just the composer explores the significance of nature. Can you see how it's not complex, right? So try not to do that. Try to always get the effect going. And that brings me back to the thesis statement that we were talking about, the thesis statement, right? So thesis statement is in effect a topic sentence of the intro, but it's just called a different thing. And some schools might even, use thesis statement and topic sentences interchangeably, okay? But anyhow, you really need a cause and effect in the thesis statement. And I've already pointed that out to you with this sentence. So this is a cause here, instigated by mankind's inherent flaws, and the effect is the realms of human experience through gaining or losing power. So, and as I said earlier, it's okay not to have the cause first and then the effect. In this case, it is in order. We have, interactions with nature, that's the cause, and then we have the effect, but, you can switch it around if you want to, as long as it's clear to the marker. Now I'll get to why it's so important to have that cause and effect. So now we're looking at the 2 EEs, evidence, explanation. Okay, so as I said already, you need at least 4 quotes per paragraph. Let's just go back to this. So it's this, right? So we have the evidence. So this is the quotes. So quotes are just little sections of your prescribed text. And then the explanation is just analysis, so analytical writing. You need to unpack this quote. When you unpack the quote, by the way, you need a technique, right? That's really important. Otherwise, you're not doing the quote justice. When you're finding quotes from your prescribed text, it's really important to make sure that they have a solid technique. Not weak techniques like connotations or diction or tone. Those are weak techniques. Strong techniques, such as pathetic fallacy or metaphors or similes, hyperboles, characterization, right? So it's really important to make sure that the quotes you choose have good techniques. So you can't choose any quote. One other thing is it's really important to not say anything in your analysis unless you have a quote to back it up, okay? That's why it's called evidence. It's like if you're arguing a case in court, right? You can't say something without giving evidence. That's the same thing in essay writing. You can't say something without having a quote to back it up. So in terms of quotes, as I said, 4 quotes per paragraph is optimal. And also, just a little side note, our booklets every week, we do have 2 4-mark questions every week, and these require you to write body paragraphs. So students practice this every single week, and also we get sample answers as well to see what's expected. One very important thing is to have a progressive argument, right? So let's have a look at how that cause and effect comes into play. We have quote 1. So quote 1 needs to be related to the cause of the topic sentence. So let's go back to this one. Let's pretend that this is our topic sentence, right? And you need to find 4 quotes to back up this topic sentence so that you have that flow in argument. So your first quote, you need to have it relating to the cause, which is interactions with nature. Your second quote is also related to the cause. However, this can't be the same idea as quote 1. It needs to be slightly different, okay? So some students might have the wrong idea and think that all their quotes in one body paragraph need to be the same because it needs to be related to the same main idea that's been mentioned in the intro. Yes, it does need to be related to the main idea in the intro, but it needs to tackle slightly different areas of that main idea in the intro to have that argument. So we have the cause of the topic sentence for the quote 2, but this idea needs to build on quote 1. Okay, so let's give an example. Say that we need 2 quotes about the interactions of nature and we need to get it from a poem that you're doing or a play that you're doing or a novel that you're doing. So maybe your first quote would be about a person's positive interactions with nature. They immerse themselves into nature. They feel like it enriches them, that sort of thing. And then your second quote, you can't have the exact same sort of quote. You can't have another quote about another character also having a positive relationship. You need to kind of progress in the argument. So maybe in this quote, you can say something about the character realizing how nature makes them reflect on themselves. Can you see how that's slightly different from quote 1, but they're still about the same main idea, but they're just slightly different in terms of the little specifics of each quote. So that's really important. Just make sure that your quotes have nuances in them, okay? And then your quote 3, you would talk about the effect of the topic sentence. So back to this topic sentence. So your quote 3 would be about this part of the topic sentence now. Allow an individual to encounter wider society. Okay, so that would be something that quote 3 covers. And same thing for quote 4. So effect of the topic sentence. So the same section of the topic sentence you should be addressing, this section here. However, you need to once again build on quote 3. Okay, so I'll give you an example. For example, you have the same novel that we were talking about earlier, and then you have quote 3 being about an individual being curious about wider society, and then quote 4 talking about how through encountering wider society, they form more connections with other people. So can you see how, although this quote 3 and quote 4, they're about the same part of the topic sentence here, they're about this overarching idea, but they tackle little nuances in ideas. Does that make sense? Okay. And then our final sentence of our body paragraph would be our linking sentence. So this is the concluding sentence, and this has a link to the essay question. It should be a summary of the paragraph's contents as well. And it should be shorter than your topic sentence. Otherwise, there's something wrong there. The topic sentence is one of the most important sentences in your body paragraphs. So you can't have your concluding sentence be longer by it. And try not to double up in your vocabulary from the topic sentence. Try to always vary your vocab. Have a wide vocab. I think that's really important. One other thing for this one, so just make sure that every single quote has a different technique. So usually, when students join our tutoring school, we give them a whole booklet of techniques. And that's really important because it gives them a wide variety of techniques to choose from. It broadens their knowledge about techniques. So if you can, try to know as many techniques as possible. I think that's really important. And that also makes it easier for you to find techniques in certain quotes and not double up on any techniques. So this is a sample paragraph, and as you can see already, I really like giving samples because with samples that are good, you can kind of go through it and then point out, what's good about this and what's not so good about this, and students also have a clearer understanding of what's expected. So have a quick read through this, please. And while you're reading through it, just think about how to the structure that we've just talked about for body paragraphs. All right, let's go through this one then. So this is our topic sentence. The first two lines here. We have Shakespeare critiques Lear's hubris and irresponsibility, which instigates his downfall, exposing the detrimental effects of unbridled authority on human nature. Okay, so we need to have a cause and effect, as we've mentioned already. Do you guys just want to think about what the cause and effect for this is? If anyone knows, let me know. You can send me a text message. Numbers down here. Okay, so we've got an answer. Okay, good. So we have hubris and irresponsibility, which instigates his downfall. Okay, good. So that's the cause, and the effect is whatever's remaining. Okay, really good. And one other thing is it's so important to be very specific about your main idea in the topic sentence. So this is quite specific, okay? One other thing is try to never say the word theme or notion or idea. Super wordy, doesn't say anything, just cut it out and just go straight into the theme, okay? And also when you're talking about your quotes, never say in the line or in the quote. That's a waste of words, right? So a lot of people do run out of time in English exams because some people might not write fast enough, they might have too much to say. So running out of time is very common, so please don't waste words. That's my biggest tip. So always just try to be concise. You're not going to get extra marks just by saying in the line or in the quote, right? Okay, so that's cause and effect, that's a topic sentence. And then with that in mind, think about how each quote that is presented here links back to the topic sentence. And it's really important to make sure that all your quotes link back to the cause and effect of the topic sentence. For people in years 9 to 12, you need to have a context sentence in the second sentence of each body paragraph. We're not going to go into that today because that is relatively easy to do, and also not all grades require it, just later grades. So that's why I don't have a context sentence here. Context sentence is just summarizing what happened during the time of writing of a particular text. So if it's a context sentence for Shakespeare, you talk about things like Great Chain of Being or Divine Right of Kings. So things that are relevant to the Elizabethan period of that time. In this case, it would be Jacobean period because this one's written later in his life. Okay, so our first quote is shake all cares and business from our age, okay? So quotes are just, little sections from the actual text that you use as evidence. So this is being used as evidence for his hubris and irresponsibility, isn't it, right? So can you see how it links back to the cause of the topic sentence? So that's really important. And then we have one thing also not to do is never start sentences with quotes. Try to write something before your actual quotes. Okay, so Shakespeare establishes Lear's desire too, and then you have your quote, rather than just saying, in, and then shake all cares and business from our age. That's not good. Not good to start a sentence with a quote. You always want to integrate quotes properly. What I mean by integrate is you have to make sure that all your quotes flow on very nicely in the sentence, very naturally in the sentence, so that when someone reads your essay out loud, they can't even tell that these are quotes, right? So that's just a little tip. So in this case, can you see how this quote flows very well into the sentence, very naturally into the sentence? One other thing is make sure you have a technique for every single quote and make sure they don't double up. So in this case, we have which metaphorically illuminates. So with your techniques, try to integrate your techniques properly as well, rather than say in the metaphor, because that doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound fluent, right? So in this case, we have which metaphorically illuminates, and then you have the analysis. So this is the explanation, right? Remember the Peel structure? Remember the first E stands for evidence, which is the quote. The second E stands for explanation, which is the analysis, which is everything here, illuminates all of that. Okay, so that's all analysis. Make sure your analysis has good vocabulary, sophisticated, and also that it's clear to the marker what you're talking about. Try not to be vague with anything. Okay, so can you see how your technique, quote, analysis all fits into one sentence? And you want to do that every single time. If you're finding yourself having your quote, technique, and analysis spread over 2 sentences or even more than 2 sentences, that means you're being way too wordy. So you need to cut down on your words so that it all fits into one. And just make sure that your sentences aren't too long either. I think that's really important. Okay, so next sentence. His hubris further compels him to transgress against natural order. So one thing to note as well is make sure your sentences flow on from each other. So what I don't want to see is, having sentences one after the other, and they sound like they're written as isolated sentences, but all put into one paragraph. You want to have nice flow between your sentences, right? So there are many ways to give that nice flow. Sometimes you can use linking words such as furthermore, comma, or moreover, comma, but you can't do that every single time, because if you do that every single time, you have really robotic sentence structure. Your sentence structure is very repetitive. So what you do want to do instead is change it up, right? So sometimes you start with Shakespeare, sometimes you start with something further doing something, so that is quite nice. So in this case, this bit here is a dependent phrase, right? So you have independent phrase, this whole bit here, and then you have dependent phrase, which is here, going into the independent phrase. So it's really important to just change up your sentence structure. Can you see how, once again, the quote is very nicely integrated into the sentence? One other thing is, with your quotes, it's okay not to have the, close to the start of the sentence, as long as you're not finishing a sentence with a quote that you're analyzing. So if you're going to finish a quote, if you're going to finish a sentence with a quote that you're analyzing, try to avoid it, or just add an extra sentence of analysis afterwards. But when you add that extra sentence, it also makes it less succinct. So just try to, avoid having a quote ending the sentence. One other thing is make sure that you contextualize all quotes. What I mean by that is make sure that the marker knows what is going on in the play or in the text when that quote happens. So in this case, this is an example of contextualizing the quotes. So you have rejecting his paternal responsibility with Cordelia when she refuses to flatter him. So that's very clearly outlining what's going on in the play when this quote happens, right? Now there's a fine line between contextualizing and plot retelling. So make sure that you don't plot retell. Make sure that you don't have a whole sentence outlining what's going on, that it's just half a sentence or a little phrase, okay? So you have the technique, analysis. And then moving on, you have the next quote with the technique, site motif, that's the technique. And then you have the quote, you have little integrated quotes. So these quotes aren't for analyzing, they're just integrated because they sound nice, it makes it a bit more sophisticated. Don't overdo it, don't overdo these little integrated quotes. Maybe just do it once or twice a paragraph, no more than that, but it just gives a nice touch to it. And then you have a logical connective, so that's what I meant by the furthermore, additionally, moreover. However is also an example of one. However is used when you have opposing meanings of successive sentences. Furthermore, moreover, they mean things that build on to each other. However suggests that it's opposing, yeah? Okay, and then this is contextualizing the quotes. So it's telling us what's going on. We have the technique. Now this metaphor, you would have noticed that we said metaphor already, so you don't want to repeat the technique, which is why there's commanding tone here. Tone is a weak technique by itself, but it's okay when you use it with another technique. This is an example of what not to do on a common basis. You don't want to have in and then putting the quote there because that's not integrated properly. However, there are some quotes where there's really no way of integrating properly. And therefore, the only way is just to put in, okay? So generally, try to avoid it, but doing it once per paragraph is totally okay. Don't do it any more than that. All the other quotes should be integrated nicely. And you can see in this paragraph, this is the only quote that hasn't been integrated well, just because it's really hard to, okay? And then you have the analysis here. And then you have the concluding sentence, which is rephrasing the entire topic sentence. Any questions for that? Not really? Okay, let's move on then. So part 3, final part of today's lesson is looking at how to answer exam questions. So in the exam, you will often get a question, a statement of some sort, and you'll need to answer the question. For exam technique overall, what I'll suggest to students, even from year 7, this is something that years 9 to 12 do, but year 7s can totally do this, is write a really nice essay before your exam, memorize it, and make sure to leave a week before the exam for you to adapt to different questions. It's really important not to memorize and just regurgitate what you've memorized because you're going to lose marks that way, because that just means you're rote learning, you're not really engaging with the given question. You need to change what you've memorized to suit the question, but still keep a majority of what you've prepared. Okay, so how do you exactly answer the question? For your intros, you need to look at all keywords of the question, and they must be in your thesis statement. So thesis statement is the first sentence of the introduction. And when you outline your main ideas, try to have 1 or 2 keywords in every single main idea, just to show that you know how to adapt the question to each main idea. Because this also gives you a guide for what you're going to do for your body paragraphs. So your body paragraphs, you'll know, okay, so I'm going to answer the question in this particular way because that's what I plan to do in my introduction. So it's really important for the intro to be good because that guides the rest of the day. you have your body paragraphs, and once again, you need all keywords of the question in every topic and concluding sentence of your essay. So topic is the first sentence of your body paragraph, concluding sentence is the last sentence of each body paragraph, and you need all keywords of the question in each one. In each of your EE sentences, so those are these sentences in the middle, that talk about your quotes, your analysis, your techniques, you need at least one keyword or synonym of the question. And make sure that you don't neglect any part of the question. Make sure that all parts of the question are asked. So let's look at this practically. How does this apply to the paragraphs that we've looked at already? So this was our sample introduction from before, but this is modified to suit the exam question. So this question is super easy compared to what you usually get for exams, but this is just for teaching purposes, right? So if you guys have a look at this one, can you guys tell me what the keywords are? And you can just text me on this number to let me know what the keywords are. Okay, good. I've gotten a few responses. Really nice. Good. So we have complexities. Lovely. And we have human experience, right? So these are the keywords. So very few keywords to this question. As I said, this one's an easy one. Usual questions have around 5 to 6 keywords. So it requires a lot more thought. So let's have a look at how we adapted this introduction to the keywords of the question. So can you guys see this, right? So we put complex here and human experience here. So can you see how this thesis statement is now adapted to this question, right? Okay. And then let's have a look at the second sentence. So let's see. So can you see how complexity is here? And that's relating to the keywords of the question. And then our third sentence, we have tragic experience. So remember what I said about synonyms? You can use synonyms if you want to. So tragic experience, it kind of links to the human experience, doesn't it? So tragic human experience. Also, another example of a synonym would be dichotomy, right? So dichotomy is kind of similar in meaning to complexity. So it's totally fine to use synonyms. However, of course, it's more ideal to use keywords. If you feel like you're being a bit too repetitive with the keywords of the question, which was the case here, because you have complex here, you have complexity here. So you don't want to say complexity again. So if you feel like it's getting a bit repetitive, then you'd put like synonym. As long as it's clear to the marker that you're very clear on answering the question. Does that make sense? Okay, let's have a look at our final slide for today. So this is answering the question with this paragraph that we looked at previously. And it's the same question. So keywords are complexities, human experience. So let's have a look at how we've answered the question here. So we have complex effects, right? And human experience. So can you see how all the keywords of the question here are being presented in the topic sentence, right? And then we have Shakespeare establishes, blah, blah, blah. So not much of a keyword here. However, if we have a look at this, human, right? So that links to the keywords here. So can you see how you're just using one keyword of the question in most sentences? You have complexity here. You have human flaws. Can you see how that's just put in to answer the question, right? And then let's have a look here. You have another keyword here. So can you see how it's very important to have around one keyword in every single sentence to have that sustained answering of the question? If you just regurgitate whatever you've prepared, then you might not impress the marker. The marker will feel like you're just regurgitating everything that you've memorized, and that's never a good look. So always try to adapt to the question. So that's the complexity here. And then our final sentence, which is our concluding sentence, you have all the keywords once again. You have complexity and human. Like, experience isn't here, but flaws is. So it's kind of relating to the question. It's always good to go one step further than the question as well, to be a bit more specific than the question. Does that make sense? All right, so that's about all that I have to say today. Thank you all so much for attending today. It's been a pleasure teaching this lesson today. And if you want the PDF to today's content, please SMS 0469 851 794 for more details on how you can get this PDF. If anyone has any questions today, please text me on that number right now, and then I can answer it. Because if you have the question, I'm sure that some other people might have the question as well. No more questions? All right then, that's about it for today. Thanks guys, have a good night.